Day midweek stream. How's everyone doing today? Hope you guys like that new intro I put together. Let me pull up chat. We have Joffrey first in chat today. Hello. Welcome, welcome. Meow, as they say. We are a very cat-friendly stream here. Although my cat I lock my cat outside of my office before I stream because she's going to cause problems. Hello, Zero. Welcome to another stream. How's everyone doing? Your Cloud Pros, welcome, welcome. John Rogers, familiar face. Good to see you again. How's everyone doing? An intro you'll soon be leaving behind. Does that mean you're switching over to Linux? Guys, I'm bored. What should I watch on YouTube? You should watch the TCM stream. It's happening right now and will be occurring for the next probably an hour and a bit. So as always, as we do on these live streams, we'll do a bit of Q&A period if there's intrigue, and then we'll hop over to this week we're going to do a TryHackme box. And so be ready for that. We'll switch over to that shortly, about 15 minutes maybe, depending on questions. What is the Conti Ransomware? Well, that's what we're going to be investigating today. So stay tuned, and we will you'll learn all about Conti Ransomware and potentially what artifacts it leaves behind and what it does on an endpoint as it infects networks. Doing great. That's good to hear. Me as well. Sir, big fan. That is awesome. Glad to have you on the stream today. Looking forward to the talk. Nice. Not only will it be a talk, but it will be a hack along, right? Well, maybe not a hack along, a defend along. And so feel free. We're going to be doing a free box on TryHackme. So you can follow along if you want. And like I said, we'll get over to that in a few moments. What are we doing today? What topics? We will be investigating a ransomware incident using Splunk, right? So using a SIM. So we'll be doing some log analysis. And before we get into some more questions, I will make sure we pay the bills here. And I will let you guys know that at TCM Security, our academy is having a summer sale, right? So this is our big mid-year sale. Probably not going to do another sale for a while, right? I can't say for sure. I'm not in charge of any of that, but I know historically it's probably going to be our big sale for a while here. And so the summer sale is happening until June 30th. So the end of the month, you have the month here and some great discounts here. 50% off the academy, 20% off certifications and live training, and also quite a bit of a discount on our bundles as well. And so be sure, if you haven't already, if you haven't heard, we are doing the summer sale, the big sale for the rest of the month. And so the link should be going around in chat. Feel free to get your hands on any courses or maybe some training programs or certifications from TCM, should you be interested. All right, let me scroll back up here. Okay, yeah, 50-50. Yeah, it's tough to make a full switch, especially if you install it on bare metal. But you can dual boot, I guess. I did that for a bit with Linux Mint. But I'm still tied to Windows, unfortunately. Sorry about the robot. Yeah, you might see a robot hanging around in chat. We'll get rid of it one day. I think it's the AI taking over. You have the Conti ransomware file. Nice. Stay away from my network, please. All right, if you have any questions before we jump in, feel free to leave them in the chat. But in about 5 minutes or so, maybe sooner, we'll hop over to TryHackme and get our box started, I'll show you guys which room it is that we're going to be doing. The link should probably be going in chat or floating around every once in a while here, but share my screen. It's going to be this room titled Conti, fittingly so, where we have an Exchange server that was compromised with ransomware. And we'll be using Splunk basically to investigate how the attackers actually compromised the server and what happened, right? Building up that investigation. And so I've already started up my machine here just so it's ready, because I don't want to be fumbling around with TryHackme troubleshooting during a live stream. And so I have my Splunk interface set up. And so if you want to follow along, we won't get started for a few minutes or so, but this is the machine we're going to be doing, and it's a free machine. So if you have a TryHackme account, you can start that guy up and be ready to roll. All right, let me catch up again. Britt, don't do this to me. It's getting closer, so I don't have an exact date, just because, again, the second we announce the date, it might not come to fruition on that date. So very soon now, just a few more modules to sort of get through in Q&A, and so it's coming together. It's going to be probably bigger than SOC 101. So if you thought that was a long, big, grueling course, this one will probably be longer. Nullbyte, welcome to the stream. Glad to have you. First timers, always fun to see people in chat for the first time. What would you say is the experience level for the PSIA, or the Practical Security or SOC Analyst Associate, prerequisite-wise? It's an associate, or sort of a beginner-ish level certification and training. And so there's some assumptions in place, like, you have a decent kind of maybe a background or experience in just how operating systems work, right? Like you might be comfortable using the Linux terminal and such to do certain things. Maybe you have a little bit of security knowledge, right? Maybe like the Security Plus level and so on. But just a little bit of that prerequisite will go a long way. Although that being said, the course is sort of packaged together in a way that you'll learn everything you need in order to pass the cert during the training, right? So it sort of just takes you from that beginner level and gets you ready and prepared for the exam, with a ton of hands-on stuff, right? Some challenges and exercises and labs, and also just the training content itself. And so it's associate level, so it's not super advanced. And the training itself has basically everything you'll need to really build up all of those core foundational sort of security operations skills and methodologies. What is displaying at the back of you? A few things on the shelf. There's you can see the Pac-Man back there. It's kind of out of focus. And then I just have some. They're like decibel reading lights. So if you ever seen like a DJ? I'm not a DJ, but you can use them to sort of visualize sort of the decibels and the sort of range in the audio that's playing. And so I just set them over to demo mode. And it gives like a nice little strobing effect there. And I ordered one just to have it in the background, and then Amazon sent me two. So I have two of those, and I just get them in sync. I turn them on at the exact same time to get them in sync like that. How are you doing today, please? I'm doing well. Thank you for asking. Appreciate that. Hope you're doing well as well. When will you start? In about just a minute, my friend. We'll jump over there. Is there a certification more advanced than PSIA that you offer? On the blue team side, we have some other blue team related certifications. There's the malware triage, the sort of malware analyst certification. That's more of an advanced level. Pretty soon we're going to have the sort of senior or advanced pairing of the SOC 101, which can be SOC 201, and that will have an accompanying professional level certification, right? So you can think of it like the PNPT of sort of blue team work, and that'll focus a lot more on incident response, threat hunting, and some forensics as well. And so that'll be sort of the step up, or the next step there. Alrighty. Take one more question, then we'll hop over to TryHackme. And as always, probably have some time afterwards to get back to the Q&A as well. From Flip Flop, is it too late for me to get into cybersecurity and find a SOC analyst role at the age of 30? I have a computer science degree and I'm comfortable with Linux, I assume you mean to say, and probably some more as well. No, absolutely not. It's not too late at all. You're still very young. Really, I would just take everything that you currently have. Like, I don't know if you're currently working in maybe development or something with a computer science degree. But again, I'm sure you're doing some aspects of security if you currently have a role. And so you can sort of use that to propel you forward, or even just use your experience, taking your degree, right? And again, using that to propel forward. I would get some hands-on experience with maybe labs like the TryHackme room we're going to be doing today, stuff like that, right? So you can do the SOC level 1 path that they offer. Of course, we have a SOC analyst training and certification program as well at TCM, so that would be my bias recommendation. But really, just any kind of beginner focused course to teach you those core skills. Where's Alex from the last stream? Couldn't tell you. I think he's on vacation for the rest of the week. And so usually every week we have someone else streaming, right? So we get some variety in there. He's really into the web penetration testing stuff, right? Which I know there's a good audience for. There's also a good audience for the blue team stuff as well. So every now and then we get to do some investigations and forensics on stream. All right, let us hop back over to TryHackme and get things rolling. Like I said, I'll take some more questions as we go, and then at the end we usually wrap up with some more Q&A. But just so we have time to go through the walkthrough in the room here. Alrighty. This is a room we're going to be doing. It is called Conti. If you're familiar with Conti Ransomware, most likely what we're dealing with here, as you can see from the title. So let's start off with our scenario here, or a sitrep. So some employees from your company reported that they can't log into Outlook. Well, probably user error. Probably just don't know their password, right? The Exchange system admin also reported that he can't log into the Exchange admin center. Now that's definitely user error. People never remember their passwords. However, after initial triage, they discovered some weird README files settled on the Exchange server. That's not good. Below is a copy of the ransomware note, right? So we have our README file here. All of your files are currently encrypted by Conti strain. Yikes, that's not good. So we have some, it's telling us to download Tor. Again, if you've seen some of these ransomware notes, they're all pretty similar. Going to give us a link, onion link, and they're going to ask us to pay to decrypt our files. All right, so that's not a good sign. That's not something you want to see on an Exchange server, right? Actually, the only thing worse than seeing a ransom note on an Exchange server is probably seeing an Exchange server itself in 2025. So, all right. Can read up on Conti Ransomware. They have a link here if we wanted to. All right, so feel free to brief yourself on that strain as well. I believe it's a Russian-based kind of ransomware as a service operator. Wizard Spider, I think it's called. I don't know the APT name. However, we have some credentials for Splunk, which we don't actually need. And so if you just start up your machine, you'll be brought right over to the Splunk interface, already logged in. And looks like we have some questions. Special thanks to whoever this user is for creating the challenge. And now we have a bunch of investigative questions for us to go through, right? And so that's what we'll do. We'll sort of take it in stride and work on these bit by bit. I'm sure they sort of expand and build off of each other, which is always nice to see in these kind of investigations. Right? We want to have some direction, right? Some hypothesis or an investigative question to go through. So it looks like we have some decent questions that are to be answered here. So let's make sure. All right. So let's get started here. Hopefully everyone that wants to follow along is spinning up their machines. What we can do here is start off with the first question. So can we identify the location of the ransomware? And And what we're met with is just a blank search bar, right? Probably the bane or the scariest things for a SOC analyst to see is just a blank search bar, right? So kind of representing infinite possibilities here. Where do we even start, right? So with that, let me try to clear the screen here just so I don't want to block anything, because I know we're going to be pulling up some searches here. All right. First thing I like to do usually when I'm dealing with data that I might not be familiar with, or a Splunk instance that I haven't really messed around with before, is actually figure out what kind of sources and what data we're actually collecting, right? Or we've already ingested. And so with that, we can click on Data Summary usually in Splunk. And then if we're lucky, it'll tell us, the different hosts that have data ingested or indexed into our environment. I'm not sure if we're just not getting, oh, there we go. So we have a single host here, this Windows machine, it looks like, with about 28,000 events. We have a bunch of different sources. So looks like we have a readme.txt file. Interesting, just a single count there. We have some log files from what appears to be the IIS server. We have some application logs, security logs, setup logs, system logs, right? So the standard kind of Windows event logs that we'd expect to see. But we have some sysmon logs, right? And that's going to be kind of a cheat sheet for us. Anytime you can get your hands on sysmon data, and if sort of it's configured well, that's what you want as an analyst, right? You want to all of the telemetry and details we get with sysmon data, and so that's nice to see. Is the Ubuntu OS in a VM or installed on the hard drive? I just have it in a VM, just running a VirtualBox VM, but you can use whatever you want, right? I'm just connecting to the TryHackme OpenVPN just so I can access the Splunk server here, right? So I'm not hosting this server locally or on my VM. This is hosted by TryHackme. I just need to connect to their VPN in order to access it in the browser. All right. The other thing we can do is list out the different indexes themselves, right? So we have these sources, which will be very useful, but I want to see what indexes we have. Let me just Google the syntax for that. I should probably have this documented somewhere because I use it pretty often. Yeah, so here, let me just grab this piece of query here. If I paste that in, I'll change the time here to all time because I don't think it actually says when this occurred. We're not given any dates here. So what I don't like to do is set it to all time, but it looks like we have to in this case because I just have no idea when this incident occurred. Looks like we have 3 indexes, probably just going to be dealing with the main one here. So, all right, now that we have a little bit of structure, we know what index maybe to look in, and we know what data sources we have available to us. We can start building up a query, right? This is always going to be an iterative process. We're never going to know exactly what to look for right away, right? But we do have an investigative question to go off of, right? We know that ransomware was installed or sort of executed on the server, but where? Like what location, right? And so that's what we're going to try to answer. And so we need to build up our query sort of iteratively, right? And so what we can do here, well, again, we have infinite possibilities. What I might want to do, let me just set the index here to main. So that'll be what I select for everything. That seems to be our only index. The source type, I want to select those sysmon logs, because that's probably going to give us, again, the most kind of fidelity in terms of what we can actually pull back. So again, if we want to see if a file was created or if a process was executed, we can sometimes do that with security logs if we have auditing turned on for specific things. But sysmon just makes that a ton easier for us. And so I'll just select that there for the source type to basically just filter all of those sysmon logs. So I'll just run that because I noticed earlier there was only about 2,000 or 3,000. And so that's not going to be too bad to pull back. And now we're going to get all of the interesting fields that we might want from our sysmon data, right? We can see things like the command line values in the case of process executions, but specifically we have the event code here, which is probably what we should start to filter off of first. Right? If you remember, we're sort of doing this iteratively, right? Now we're pulling back a big sea of data here. We're just pulling back all the sysmon data. Now we want to kind of zoom in a little bit on specific things. And specifically, if we're looking for a location of ransomware, we're probably looking for a file that might have been created or placed on the system, or maybe changed or updated, right? All of these things can sort of be indicators that we might want to start hunting for in this data. Is this being recorded, and can I get it to watch it afterwards? Yes, it will. Easiest way to watch the replay is probably just on TCM's YouTube channel. So if you just go under the live tab, this will be here after we wrap up. And so anyways, the first thing I probably want to filter is, again, based on that event code. And we have a number of different event filters or event codes in sysmon data. And as you work with sysmon more, you'll probably remember and recognize some of these, right? So we have number 1 here. Event code 1 is going to be process executions. Event code 3 is going to be network connections. For example, what's another? Event code 11, for example, is file creations. So I actually might want to select this. And so again, we could type out the query itself, the syntax. But again, if you want to be, I wouldn't say lazy, I would say effective. Again, we can open up these fields and just click on whatever value we want, and it'll automatically add that to our search. Cool. And so now we're filtering that down even more. You can see we only have 100 events now because we're only looking at those file creation or modification events that sysmon is tracking. And so with that, we're probably getting a bit closer here. What I might want to do is look at, now we can sort of aggregate what are the actual file names, right? Or what are the locations of these file names that have been logged, right? Because right now we're just getting sort of time and event. We can open up these events and look at different things, right? So we have this image field, for example, and in the case of this log in particular, it's pointing over to Windows Defender /mp cmd-run.exe. So I might want to see what these binary names are for each of these logs. And so the field, again, is going to be that image type or that image field, right? And if I just click on this, we're going to get a nice kind of aggregation of the top 10 values in our logs, right? So we can see cleanmanager.exe, you can see servicehost.exe, right? We're going to see that all the time. Seeing some PowerShell, which is interesting, right? Some more System32. I do see something peculiar here, which is sort of a dead giveaway for us. But another way we can list this out is we can just create a table, right? So what I'll do here is pipe that. So I'll just use the pipe character, which will drop me into a new line here. That's how we can sort of take the output from Splunk, from our search, and then maybe do some more operations or transform our results even more. And so what I'll do here is basically just create a table. And I can just say I want to pull back, let's say time, and then the image field as well. Actually, that's not going to be what we want to do. We could count them up, or we could just pull back the top values. And so let's make our lives even easier. Instead, again, I'm just going to click on the image field, and I'll just click on top values under reports here. And so that'll sort of aggregate that for us just by using the top command. And then it'll try to give us a visualization, which we don't need. So if we go under statistics, again, it's going to give us that same kind of list. Now we're getting the counts and the sort of percentage in our data of these specific things. And so I'll pose a question to the audience. Does anyone see any binaries or programs here that are a little suspicious, that maybe we might want to investigate farther? While we do that, I'll see if there's any pending questions. It's probably a bit of a delay, so see if anyone spots it. What I can also do is just start going through some of these and trying to check sort of their reputation, right? So we're not actually going into hash values or anything yet to actually verify. But what we can do is use something like Echo Trail, and we can sort of feed it Is this the right site? Search, yeah. We can feed it different binary names, right? So if you don't know, if you've never seen cleanmanager.exe before, we can search that in here, right? So cleanmgr.exe, and it'll tell us sort of the prevalence of this binary, right? And it'll tell us like where it should live on the file system and how many hosts in sort of its sample size have this binary on their system, right? And so we can see 85%, which is a good sign, right? If this was actually a piece of malware, and if it was on 85% of systems worldwide, that would not be very good, right? And we can see that it should be found in Windows System 32, which it is, right? So from a high level, we can start to write this one off as maybe less suspicious, right? If you were more familiar with what this executable was, we can see it's the disk space cleanup manager, right? So again, we can use something like Echo Trail, and maybe even if we wanted to go down this list, W3WP, for example, is the service worker for IS servers, right? So again, some of these we can sort of write off. But let's see. There we go. Yep. cmd.exe in documents. All of you guys got it. Good job. That's the big thing, right? It's even just CMD on its own would be a little suspicious. But again, this is a server, so maybe we have system administrators doing things in the command prompt, but that should never happen, right? Should not be under documents for any user. And so that is definitely a red flag, right? This is sort of our suspicious finding here that we probably want to take and then pivot off of, right? So I'll just grab this and then I'll probably just start searching directly for any events related to this path here, right? Because I want to see, was this executed? What was its hash value? What was its parent process, right? What was the user who executed it? All these questions now we can start to answer now that we sort of have our first kind of foothold into our data set here. And so I'm going to assume that's the location of the ransomware. I mean, we could be wrong. It could be a part of the puzzle, right? And so again, we might want to look at the parent process. We want to look at what's spawning that. But let's just try that out. Take a look at the hint too. Look for a common Windows binary located in an unusual location. It's definitely that. Awesome. And so what I might want to do now is, again, just search for that image, right? So I'll just go back here and list out all of those images. And then I'm just going to add, where was it? I don't see it here. And so I'll just use that as the image field and just paste in that path there. No results found. Okay, let's do event code 11. Now we can go down to image. Oh, I needed to escape out those backslashes. That's why that didn't work. But what I can do here is just click on that finding. And that'll automatically add those backslashes for us. There we go. And now it looks like we have 18 different events. If I take out event code 11, I want to see if this actually executed anywhere. And so I could have changed event code, for example, to 1 for those process executions. There we go. So it looks like we do have 1. It looks like that's a next question, or no. Yeah, this one. What is the sysmon event ID for the related file creation event? Again, that's 11. We just sort of looked at that. If I look up sysmon event IDs, we can go over to the sysinternals website from Microsoft. And if we scroll down, it'll list all of the, the common, the useful event IDs here, right? So just like I was saying, we have process creation for event ID 1, event ID 3 is the network connections, and so on, right? We have a ton of useful ones here. File create for 11, for example. We have a bunch of registry events. We have WMI events, DNS events, right? File delete. Sysmon, incredibly useful. If you want to get more hands-on with Sysmon, you can check out the SOC 101 course. We also have a video on TCM about doing some attack simulation and detection with Sysmon as well. So if you're interested, be sure to check those out. Now, can you find the MD5 hash of the ransomware? Yeah, so that's what I was doing. So again, Sysmon being all super powerful. When we're logging things like network connections, or specifically with process creation events, um, Sysmon can actually get the hash value of a particular process or binary that's executing. Right. And so just by searching for this suspicious cmd.exe, I can filter it down to event code 1 to get those process executions. And in doing that, it looks like we have a single event here. And if I open that up, we can sort of take a look at what's going on. And so again, it looks like this weird, suspicious CMD executable did in fact execute. Right? There was a process created. Again, it launched out of the documents folder. What else can we find here? We can find the parent image was the actual CMD process, right? So we have the legitimate command prompt spawning this weird command prompt that's probably some sort of ransomware binary or some sort of malware that's just been renamed to cmd.exe. We also have somewhere, there should be hashes. There we go. So if I open this up, you can see we have various hash values for this particular event, right? Or this particular file that was executing. So we have MD5, as you can see. We have the SHA-256, as well as the import hash as well, right? So if you wanted to do some more sort of broad hashing, we have the import hash as well. So can we find the MD5 hash of the ransomware? So this appears to be the ransomware binary itself. And so I'll just grab this field, copy that out, and just give it that hash. There we go. While we're on that note, why don't we triage this a little bit? Try to figure out some more information about what piece of malware we're actually dealing with, right? So we've extracted out that suspicious hash value from that suspicious command line process. That is not actually cmd.exe, right? It looks like, again, some sort of Conti ransomware, right? It's an encoder binary. So this is not good, right? Pretty much lighting up the whole Christmas tree here. Take a look at details. Right, so we get different hash values, and get architecture information. You can see other names it was associated with, right? So it looks like we have a bunch of randomly generated executable names here, which again, more entropy here, just pointing to this is most definitely not something we want on our network. We can see a bunch of additional information about the headers. If we look at relations, we can see different domains it might have contacted or IP addresses, right? And so again, we won't go through the entirety of VirusTotal, but again, very quick reputation look up there. This is not something we want to be running. All right. Just checking up on the chat. Hello, welcome. Conti just wants to be your friend. True. Alrighty. What file was saved to multiple folder locations? We can probably also look at file creation events for that as well, right? Before we do that, I also want to see if there's any network connection events from this binary as well. So what I can do is just change the event code to 3, for example. Oh, and we do. And we have 2 events. So you just open these up and take a look at what's going on here. Because with the network connection events, or again, these event code 3s, we usually get source and destination IP information, right? So apparently this binary made some kind of network connection, and this was logged via Sysmon. As we can see the source IP, I'm assuming this is the server itself that was infected. And then it reached out, destination, to this other IP address on the same network, over port 445. That's not good. All right. We might have some attempting to replicate itself, right? Sort of like a worm over SMB, it looks like, right? And so I think that's one of the characteristics of Conti malware, right? Well, a ton of ransomware does that, right? Over SMB, right? So that could be potentially indications of that going on, right? Over to this 10.10.10.6 IP address. And so that just adds to our scope, right? This is another potentially infected system that we want to take a look at, right? If we look at this first one here, again, another IP address, again, of another potentially affected system. Actually, I think that first one was 10.10.10.6. Yeah, connecting to itself, I guess. But it looks like it did reach out to this 10.10.10.4 IP address as well. And so again, this one adds to our scope, right? We also want to take a look at what's going on with this IP address now. Of course, after we investigate this. So what file was saved to multiple folder locations? Again, there's a ton of different ways we can do this. We could look at event code 11s again, see if we can pull back anything. I'm going to keep the image the same because, again, it looks like we're still sort of connected to this original piece of malware that executed, right? And so actually, that might not work. So we go under image here. Yeah, we're just going to get the same image. Let me remove that. Now we have more images. Or is there a file field that we can look at? Maybe not. Target file name. There we go. Let's try to add that. And we can look at the aggregations for that. Yeah, there we go. So readme.txt, right? So it looks like the same one that might have been in our sitrep here. Seeing some DLLs, multiple readme.txt actually. That's probably what we're looking for. What if I do a search for readme.txt? 18 events. Now we can look at the target file name. Yeah, there we go. So these are all readme.txt files being created, right? So if I create a table, I can add the time. Let's also look at the image and target file name. Yeah, there we go. That pretty much paints the picture for us. And we can see very quickly we have a bunch of, again, this command process is creating a bunch of readme.txt file names all across different areas of the system. Right? We can see in roaming, local, downloads, videos, it's all this readme.txt, which I assume, again, well, that we saw is the ransom node itself, right? So the ransomware operator wants the victim to know that they've been ransomed. So why don't we just throw this readme.txt everywhere? I'm assuming that's what's going on. So I can figure out how to pay to get their files decrypted. So again, all we did there, just looked at those file creation events. We searched for that readme.txt, and we could see a bunch of those were created. What tool is this? This is Splunk on the TryHackme room. We're doing the Conti ransomware investigation here, which they give us a Splunk instance of data. Cool. All right. What was the command the attacker used to add a new user to the compromised system? Well, this one should be pretty straightforward. I'll see if anyone has any ideas in the chat, but if we want to look at this from a hunting perspective, there's some living off the land kind of techniques we can very easily look for, which will most likely give us this answer here, right? Pretty common in a lot of attacks if someone is setting up a new account. There's some common commands we can look out for to do that kind of thing. We don't even need sysmon to do that, actually. So maybe we'll take a look at a few different ways. There you go. Someone's got it. Net user. That's correct. That's my first guess, right? Potentially, maybe they did it through PowerShell. Not sure. But again, we see this. We saw the parent process here was cmd.exe. So maybe we'll have some luck, right? Again, from a threat hunting perspective, maybe that's what we want to target first. So what I can do, if we want to get the actual command line values, which again, we can probably only get through Sysmon unless we have command line auditing turned on for standard Windows security logs. Typically, Sysmon's going to give us a lot more fidelity there by default. So I can change event code to equal 1 for those process create events. And then I'll just do a search for net.exe. And it looks like we do get some events here. And so what I'll do is just pipe this over to a table again. I like to build out tables as we sort of pull back information so you can quickly see at a glance what's all going on, right? Let's do image. What other fields might we want? Command line. There we go. And I spelled that wrong. There we go. So you can see here, we have our timeline on the left. We see the image that was being generated. That was another thing I was going to do, search for net1.exe. Does anyone know sort of the history behind net1.exe and why we have sort of both? It's kind of interesting. But under command line here, we can basically, again, because we have this command line auditing through Sysmon, we can see basically all the commands that the attacker ran in that sort of by using the net.exe binary, right? So we can see they ran net user and they added a user called Security Ninja with the password hard to hack $123 $, right? And then again, we have the same command executed through net1. So again, if I just look up net1 versus net.exe, Y2K. I don't know if this is like a rumor or not. I never really looked into it. But the reason why we have net and net1 was a sort of temporary hot fix kind of solution for Y2K, if you can believe it or not. And so again, we'll typically see both net and net1 executing the same commands when we're logging in this kind of way. And so we can see net user, this backdoor user was created, Security Ninja. We can see they were added to administrators, and then we can see they were also added to the remote desktop users group as well, which is not a good sign, right? So now we have a remote desktop-able admin as a backdoor. Which TryHackme room is this? This is the Conti room. So you can probably find the link in chat if you scroll up a bit too. Or if you just search for Conti on TryHackme, you'll find it. Cool. And so, question, what was the command the attacker used to add a new user? That one was pretty simple. Again, some of that old but gold technique there, that low-hanging fruit that attackers still use, right? These sort of living off the land techniques. And if we have command line auditing, it makes it a ton easier for us to figure out, right? If we didn't have this command line field, that's going to be pretty hard to figure out what was being done, right? We might see that net.exe was run, but that's all we get, right? Net can be used, we can use net user, net share, right? We'll have no idea what was actually run unless we also get that command line telemetry as well. For some reason, it doesn't want to submit this. Let me refresh. Try that again. Oh, it worked. Okay. So we have that one down. Let me look to the chat. How often do you use Splunk? When I need to. It's probably the SIM I've used the most recently. I've used the Elastic Stack, Security Onion, all of these sort of open source kind of ones as well. I've used Qualys a bit. But it's a good go-to, especially for the lab environment as well. If you're using the free tier, right? It is a pretty expensive solution, Splunk Enterprise, in sort of commercial environments, right? But I would say it's probably the most approachable for beginners. But they're all the same, you know. The syntax might be a little bit different depending on what you're using. But at the end of the day, we're looking at sysmon data, right? And sysmon data is going to have specific fields like the image name, the command line, right? So it's just a matter of knowing how to target those fields using whatever syntax we expect, right? So you can see here we have this key and value pair, right? Event code equals 1. KQL, for example, might use a colon instead of an equal sign, right? So it's just stuff like that. That at the end of the day, it doesn't matter as long as you know what you're looking for, right? If you can form a hypothesis, if you can form an investigative question, you can use whatever SIM or tool or log aggregator out there to find what you're looking for, right? So again, always preach methodology and sort of how you approach investigations over how can I use a specific tool to do this kind of thing, right? Hopefully that makes sense. All right. The attacker migrated the process for better persistence. Yikes. What is the migrated process image or executable? And what is the original process image or executable when the attacker got on the system? So, because we have sysmon data, this is probably possible, right? Again, without it, depending on what kind of auditing we have in our environment, this would be very hard to detect using logs alone, right? Just standard Windows event logs, for example. And again, if we don't have like a memory image, again, that's going to be hard as well to detect different injection techniques and such. And so, because again, we have sysmon data, I'm going to look for the create remote thread event because that is probably going to be useful to us here. What is that? Event ID 8. Right, so the create remote thread event detects when a process creates a thread in another process. Right? This is a technique that's often used by malware to inject code and hide in other processes, right? Or to migrate processes. And so we'll get a source and target process. We can also see things about the new thread, right? The start address, the start module. And so again, this is sort of getting into a little bit of fileless or sort of memory kind of forensics here. But again, through sysmon, we can get some of that fidelity as well. So that's what I'm going to target here. Let me look at the hint just to be safe. Yeah, try sysmon event code 8. So that's what we'll do. We'll look to see, again, we can start out more broad. We'll just search all of the sysmon data for any kind of create remote thread events and see if we can zoom in from there. We have 2. Okay. This first one, again, we should have that start and that target field to look for, or the source. This one is unsecapp.exe. The target, is lsas.exe. Okay. That is concerning. What's the other one here? Oh, here we go. So we have PowerShell that is being injected into, okay, so this unsecapp.exe. And this is the first event, right? So if we look at it in chronological order, we have this one, then later on, about a minute later, we have this event. So we should start here, actually. What we can see here is that, again, we have this PowerShell.exe process, which is actually executing out of the legitimate location, right? So we do have PowerShell here that appears to have created a remote thread into this system32 web bem unsecapp.exe. Let me look at echo trail for this as well. And for the host prevalence, this appears to be a pretty prevalent binary, right? So it looks like, as the sort of question here suggested, the attacker migrated that PowerShell process into a legitimate executing process for better persistence, right? So again, if we take a look at this now, we're just going to see this legitimate or seemingly legitimate process running, again, under System32 where it should be. So that was a sort of technique here, right? Some sort of process injection to sort of migrate and better persist undetected in the environment. And so what we could do is kind of, again, if we wanted to look into that original process farther, we should get, where is it? And we get the process ID, right? Again, we see the source image. We can see the process ID of the target or the new process that was injected into, right? So we can get that. And if we wanted to triage that and look at surrounding events related to this process ID to see what it did, now that we have that information as well, right? So we should document that kind of thing. If we had a bunch of events here that we wanted to sort of narrow down and sort of aggregate or make more sense of, again, we could create a table. So we can throw in the time. We can see the source image, right? Source image, and then we can also grab the target image. And then this way, with a table like this, at a quick glance, we can see what process created a remote thread into what process, right? So again, it looks like this unsec app was then used to create a thread into the LSAS executable, which is not good, right? So I'm suspecting this was used to dump credentials, right? So maybe using some sort of tool or technique or procedure to basically hook into that LSAS process and maybe get the memory out to dump those credentials, right? So, well, we'll start off with this one because this appears to be the original. What is the process image executable? What is the original process executable when the attacker got on the system? How do they want this? Separated with a comma. There we go. Yeah, that's the only hint we got for that one. But again, because we have sysmon data, it makes our lives a ton easier. I didn't realize TryHackme had rooms where you get to use Splunk. Yeah, it's pretty cool. There's probably a few now. If you look in the SOC level 2 path, I think there should be some other challenges around Splunk as well. Cool. All right. Let's continue. The attacker also retrieved the system hashes. What is the process image used for gathering the system hashes? Well, I think we figured that out just by, again, looking at the create remote threat events, right? Because now that we have this process image to look for, this is sort of our, we know this to be evil now, right? So anything that this process does should also be suspicious, right? And so we can see here, this process is now hooking into that LSAS process. Again, like I said, most likely to dump credentials, right? Again, if you don't know, LSAS, the Local Security Authority Subsystem Service, basically, the keys to the kingdom there for for passwords and hashes, right? Stores all the Windows credentials, NTLM hashes, right? Kerberos tickets. And so by injecting malicious code into the LSAS process, they can basically execute any kind of credential dumping tool that they want, right? Or whatever kind of code to dump those credentials, right? And so I'll just grab that. Cool. What was the hint for that one? Yeah, same kind of thing. All right, how are we for time here on our box? 43 minutes. All right, what is the web shell the exploit deployed to the system? For that, we might be able to use sysmon if it's actually, again, executing underlying commands on the operating system. But if we're hunting whatever the web shell or where it's hosted at, probably need to look at a different source. And so there we go. We have IAS as our source type. And so, yeah, so for this question, we'll switch over to the actual IAS server, that web server on Windows, right? What are the its specific log events, right? Because again, now we're sort of dealing with that application log instead of the endpoint logs to figure out where an attacker might have implanted a web shell, right? A malicious page on the web server where they can actually execute commands. And so there's some, various threat hunting techniques we could use to find that kind of thing, right? Different ways we could approach it. We could use pivots, right? If we, again, if we were doing our due diligence here and actually tracking the time that some of this stuff was occurring, we could use that to sort of narrow down our aperture onto a specific range of events, right? But I'm being lazy here and just going question by question. We could use maybe an IP address that we've discovered, right? Accessing a certain part of the web page. We know that that I don't even remember the IP now. It was like 10.10.0.4, right? So again, we could maybe use that. Looks like we have this C_IP field. And so we have some internal addresses, localhost. Then we have 10.10.10.6 and 10.10.10.2. So these are probably the ones that we're going to want to filter to, because these are the actual IP addresses that were accessing the website. And so I always like to start with the lower or the more rare counts here. And from here, we can probably look at what URLs are being accessed. Right? Autodiscover.json, a little bit suspicious. A weird randomly named file here with a .aspx extension, pretty suspicious. Actually, I think autodiscover.json is legitimate. It's under that autodiscover URL. When in doubt, just search for things. Microsoft Exchange 0-day vulnerabilities. Whoops. Proxy not shell. First vulnerability in proxy not shell exploitation is CVE 2022 and is unauthenticated server-side request forgery. Sends an arbitrary request with a controlled URI and controlled data to an arbitrary backend service with local system privileges. Is that what we're looking at here? We do have a bunch of auto-discover URLs. Maybe. What is the web shell the exploit deployed to the system? PowerShell in here is interesting. Some remote PowerShell going on, maybe. Okay, I'm already suspicious of this. We might be dealing with this vulnerability here. But what is the actual? It's not this, right? It's not autodiscover.json. I don't think that can actually execute commands. Is the problem? Yeah. But we did see that ASPX page as well, right? So again, for another approach to sort of back off here, again, if we're sort of in the weeds, not finding anything, we could look to classic techniques, right? For a web shell, we're most likely looking for pages that can actually execute code or commands, right? So maybe an ASPX file like we looked at, maybe a .asp file, right? If we know that it's running a PHP sort of based web server, well, of course, we'd be looking for a .php extension, right? So we could quickly filter for those, right? So I can just do a search for wildcard.php, wildcard. It looks like nothing. ASP. Now we're getting somewhere, right? So we have some results. Again, because this is an IIS web page, we expect to see sort of ASPX files. Now if I look at URI stem. Okay, it looks like a bunch of things that aren't related. Why is that one showing up? I don't see any .asp. ASPX. We're going to get a bunch of different queries. Okay, so we look at the top, or let's look at the rare values, right? The least visited endpoints. And that's not very useful. Right? I'm going to grab this field name and specifically say, I want that to end with .aspx. There we go. So now we only have 52. That's a lot easier to work with. We could, and yeah, so now what I'll do is we just have 10 top events. So let's look at those. Statistics. So the highest count here is auth, OWA/auth/logon to ASPX. That's that. I'm familiar with that address, right? I think it can be abused with proxy.shell, but it does seem to be legitimate. I don't think the attacker uploaded a logon.aspx. Maybe they've modified it in a way. Default view user mailbox. This one, again, the suspicious one we looked at earlier has come back up with only 4 counts. The only reason why it sort of sticks out to me is just because it's randomly named, right? There's no rhyme or reason to this specific file name, right? Everything else here has a legitimate name, right? And if this is the web shell in question, actually, let's see if that's it. There we go. So this kind of points to one of those paradoxes with malware authors, right? If you're exploiting a web server and you want to get a web shell up, or really anything, if you're dropping files, there's kind of this push and pull between how you want to approach naming your malware, right? It's either, do you make it hard to write signatures for, right? So if we have completely randomly generated names, it's going to be hard to generate or write a signature for this, right? Because the next time this shows up in a different environment, it could have an entirely different random name, right? So that's hard to write a signature for, but the caveat is it really sticks out in the wild, right? Opposite to that, if we were to name it something legitimate sounding like login.aspx, right? That's very easy to write a signature for if we detect it's malware, right? So that's sort of the paradox or the push and pull for malware authors there, and it leads to some interesting discoveries. And so what I'll do is just grab this file name. We can use that as a pivot point now, because I'm assuming, yeah, what is the command line that executed this web shell? So we could just look at any of those requests. There we go. So I want to grab probably, thing is, were these get requests or post requests? They were post requests. What is that? CS_method. Yeah, they're all post requests. Okay, so we're not going to get any low hanging fruit probably in the query parameters, because the actual commands that were being sent to this web shell were probably through the post data, which I highly doubt we're collecting or logging with these IS logs. And so we do have access to sysmon, and so we could return to that, right? So I'll keep that as my search. I'll change the source type back to sysmon, where we get those command line fields, because again, if we have a web shell sitting on a web server, and then attacker is executing commands using that web shell, well, those commands have to execute somehow, right? There has to be a process that's actually running those underlying commands, right? And again, if we have sysmon logging, those commands will be logged. Looks like we have one event. It is a process creation event. The system32 attrib.exe process. What is it running? Where's command line? It looks like it's doing something to this specific file at this location. So it's either, no, it's executing. But what is its child then? I'm pretty sure a trib doesn't actually execute things. Sets or removes attributes assigned to files or directories. If used without parameters, it is used with R. Sets or clears the read-only file attribute. So it was making this file, or it was clearing this file from its read-only state. Okay, so I guess that's the attacker setting up the web shell and then making it sort of not read-only so it can actually execute, right? Maybe to ensure that the web shell commands can be executed without any sort of restrictions there, right? So get the process ID. And what I'll do here is search for any events where that attrib.exe process, nope, is the parent. So I guess that's the only one we have to work with. Which I think this question, unless I'm reading this wrong, I think this is a bit misleading. What is the command line that executed this web shell? But this command line here didn't actually execute anything. It just removed that read-only attribute from this file. But based on the length here, it looks like this is it. Yeah, there we go. Check the command line. Okay, yeah, unless I read that wrong, I think that question might need to be reworded. Because I'm not seeing any clear evidence that anything was executed, right? Any commands were run. I just see that the file, the web shell itself, had that sort of attribute cleared, the read-only attribute. Maybe I'm wrong. Who knows? What 3 CVs did this exploit leverage? Provide the answer in ascending order. We had this one here, assuming we have 2 here. External research required. Does it say anything in here? No. Conti Ransomware CVE. Again, it didn't really lead us down a path of specific vulnerabilities. I assumed it was something related to proxy not shell because we found potential indicators of that in the logs. So I'm assuming it's probably something here. Oh, maybe it's these 3. Third one. Oh, no, there's just 2. Okay. Guess we have to search around. I don't like these questions. We have to do research live. Oh, okay, here we go. Here's 3. Three. Is that in ascending order? No, it's not. Uh, 3, 1, 2, 0, 7. 3, 4, 5. Whoops. Now it's in ascending order. Incorrect. That is in ascending order. Do we reverse it? Also correct. When was this room created? 1,244 days ago. That was 2022. Yeah, so these should be valid. Well, I'm not going to spend too much time on researching those because, again, if it's not that and if it's not proxy not shell, probably just going to waste time. Let's see what the answer is. It's just the last question. It don't matter. We get a hint where external research is required. This article contains a number of CVEs related to Conti Ransomware. And so it's just, you're just guessing? Is that what you're supposed to do? We analyzed 3 CVEs. Okay, I guess it's right here. We didn't research hard enough. Critical RC vulnerability, SMB ghost. Again, where was that in the logs? You know, maybe we could have looked harder, but I figured it should have been part of our investigation here. Unauthenticated attacks. Yeah, I didn't see any of these in the investigation we just did, but we'll roll with it. There we go. Looks like that was it. One more question. Start the attached virtual machine. There we go. So that was that. Yeah, pretty nice investigation there. What we didn't do, and no fault to any kind of cyber range or labs, is that really the main part of doing these kind of investigations is writing a report, right? So what we didn't do is really track a timeline in any case, right? We figured out each of the answers, but we didn't really put together how everything came to be in sort of a timeline, right? So that's where I think doing labs is fantastic for learning sort of the hands-on stuff. And as best practice, as you go through these kind of rooms like this and you do different investigations using Splunk or Elastic, whatever it is, definitely document everything as you go through and build up a full timeline of the attack, right? Because for instance, I could not tell you when the ransomware was actually placed on the server, right? If I documented that, and I documented the timestamp of when sort of the process was executed, when the file was created based on those sysmon logs. Again, that's really the insight that we need to do proper investigations, right? Again, I couldn't tell you if the user was added before or after, right? So again, we're just going through the questions sort of for the sake of going through them and completing the room, right? But again, I'll urge you, if you do go through these kind of investigations as sort of a value add and to really make your investigations much stronger and make yourself stronger and more contextualized as an analyst, definitely treat it as a real incident, right? And write up an incident report and write down that timeline, right? Create a table and say, at this specific time, the attacker did this. At this specific time, we suspect this occurred, right? I think you'll learn a lot about contextualizing as you do that. All right. That was pretty fun. Let's hop back over and wrap up with some Q&A. Quite a few questions catch up to. Do you have a video of installation for Splunk? There's videos all over YouTube you can look up on how to do that. If you're taking the SOC 101 course, we do walk through how to do that. It's pretty simple. You just need to basically create a Splunk account, and then you can sort of download the binaries there for whatever operating system you're using. All right. Have you heard of the RootMe website for CTFs? I've heard of it. Never actually. Isn't that a older? No, maybe I'm thinking of something else. I'm thinking of Hack This Site or something. Don't think I've ever done any of those labs. Mostly stick to Blue Team Labs online, TryHackme. What else? Hack the Box Sherlocks, the main staples. If you're US prior service, Splunk does offer specific trainings to include subscriptions to the trainings. That's awesome. Yeah. There's some free Splunk trainings as well. Just if you want to pick up the search syntax and whatnot and how to do different things in Splunk, there is some free training out there you can sign up for, which is great that they do that. What command line should I have a basic understanding of for cybersecurity? I would just say system administration in general for both Windows and Unix-based systems, right? So make sure you know how to use Bash and the terminal to get around and do specific things, right? You know how to navigate your way through the operating system. You know where files should be stored and where binaries are and different commands for doing. Again, if you think about system administration stuff, that's mostly where you're going to want to live as a defender as well. Because if you're tracking things like living off the land techniques, or again, if you want to do some analysis in the command line, a lot of those native tools are going to be your best friend. On the Windows side, learn how the command line works. Again, same kind of thing from an administration perspective. How can you enumerate different services on a host, or how can you query scheduled tasks, right, or different services, or things like that, or they're working with a registry, right? And so know how to do that in both command line and PowerShell, and you'll be in a good spot. 2025, how come in hacked news I don't see ransomware as much as I used to? Are times changing? Uh, you'll definitely see ransomware out there all the time still. Let me pull up the DFIR report. This is my sort of go-to for a ton of, again, tracking different cases out there. Again, the most recent one here, just from the other week, more ransomware, right? The DFIR report covers a lot of ransomware. And so if you're not seeing it in your news sources, I'll probably expand your scope there. It's definitely still probably one of the most prevalent attacks out there these days. I think attackers pivot to InfoStealer more recently. Yeah, that's definitely a good point. InfoStealer, I think if you look at the latest M-Trends report from Mandiant that came out in 2025, just a month ago, I think InfoStealer is probably number one up there, with ransomware following shortly behind. Hello. Unfortunately, we just finished the box to you guys that just arrived. But we can always watch the replay. If our org has Defender XDR, would enabling Sysmon give more visibility? Yeah, you'll probably see a lot of overlaps in visibility, but yeah, it would really just be a matter of comparing the two. I mean, they're both from Microsoft, right? And they both sort of hook into the same kind of event traces. And so again, you'll probably see some similar things. Sysmon is really good at providing more enrichment to things, like, again, grabbing the hash values off of a binary, for example. So again, it depends if your current XDR solution can do that kind of thing. So it's probably just a matter of comparing the two. I would probably, if you want to test out Sysmon in a lab environment, right? It's completely free, right? The only cost is sort of the resource aspect of running the agent, right, or the service on hosts. So it can be really useful if you just want to target specific high value systems with Sysmon, right? You don't have to roll it out to every single endpoint if you do have good enough visibility already. But in some scenarios, it can provide that extra, just a little bit of extra telemetry for you. Do you use Ubuntu as your primary OS or as a VM? I just use it as a virtual machine. Probably the only distribution of Linux that I use, unless I really need to use Kali Linux or Parrot for something. But usually you can just install whatever you want on Ubuntu. Yeah, I don't really overthink it personally. Yeah, I use Windows for day to day. What do you use to catch up with news every day? Yeah, like I was saying, the DFIR report is probably the number one source that I use, particularly because I also realize you can listen to them on Spotify. And so if I don't have time to read through an investigation, I'll just throw on the summary on Spotify, which is nice. Sometimes look at dark reading or bleeping computer just for like general news. But for specific sort of, again, investigations or breaking kind of things, DFIR report, Krebs on security, hacker news sometimes, not my go-to, or threat post. It's a bunch of decent resources out there. Hey, first time on your channel. By the way, I'm watching your 5-year-old penetration testing course, 15 hours one. Nice. If you do want to take a blue team course, we somewhat recently uploaded the the beginning portion of the SOC 101 course on YouTube as well. Not a TLDR fan then. I never actually looked at it. I see their ads from time to time, and it looks nice. I just never integrated it in my bookmarks. Alrighty. I think we're at the time to wrap things up. But thank you everyone for going through. Hopefully, if you did follow along, you were able to, and it made sense. But again, the rewatch will be available on YouTube under the live tab, so you can always just rewatch the stream if you need to. But yeah, that was a fun little challenge using Splunk. There's some others on TryHackme too, specifically around Splunk. There's some around using the Elastic Stack as well. There's also the Boss of the SOC challenges that Splunk hosted. So you can do those on bots.splunk.com. And so there's a ton of different, if you did enjoy working with Splunk and doing that sort of log analysis, there's a ton of different free other challenges or labs out there. So with that, thank you, everyone. Thanks for tuning in. Just another reminder that we have the Academy sale that's going on until June 30th. And so if you want to get 50% off the Academy or 20% off certifications or live training or the bundles, you can just check out at Academy. There's no discount code or anything. It's just all sort of baked in. And that'll be running until June 30th. So if you were sort of on the edge and if you want to get a subscription so you can go through a course or a training, now's probably the time to do it until the end of the year when we might run another sale. I'm not sure. But thanks, everyone, for tuning in. Hope you enjoyed the room for today. And see you guys next week. Not sure who will be streaming, but somebody will. For more hands-on practical stuff. All right. Thanks, everyone.